Alrighty, let's do this. We've got some new exclusive information about Michael McKee and Monique's relationship or their marriage. I've just been looking for so much stuff regarding this case. It's really hit me. I feel like I can relate in some ways, again, never likening myself to these victims, but this one has really got me in the feels, and so many emotions and memories are coming up. So that's why I wanted to put in this public records request with the Roanoke, that's a difficult city, Roanoke County Police in Virginia. Thanks to the docket, we got the information. Michael McKee was quote unquote cleared by arrest. This is in June 2018 after his divorce from Monique was final, but it's not what you think. It's just related to some zoning violation. We'll get into the details, but the main thing it showed me from the public records request, the dates I requested, it showed me that Monique Tepe, as she was known, of course, upon her death, it showed me that Monique never called the cops, and I could truly relate. So let's talk about what all this exclusive news means. It's not what you think necessarily. Police can use the most confusing terms sometimes. So I went on this fact-finding mission to find out what I could about Michael McKee. We know he's charged with killing his ex-wife, Monique Tepe, and her husband, father of her two beautiful children, Spencer Tepe, Dr. Spencer Tepe, a dentist. He got plenty of accolades. You could tell from his photos and videos, and him and Monique were so much in love. I wanted to look for everything, so I looked in Virginia. I was contacting Virginia authorities to find out, okay, what went on in that house, the house of violence on Verona Trail. You know, we went over their divorce paperwork, and I thought, oh boy, now that we got this new information from the arrest affidavit, which let us know just how much Monique suffered in her marriage, according to the things she would tell her friends, like being strangled by McKee during their marriage. I don't know what happened when they were dating, but it said during their marriage, and he forced unwanted relations on her. All these things, and it's so much worse than, you know, the little snippets we've got, but I wanted to know the facts. You know, you hear a lot of rumors. I want to see what police reports were out there. Well, thank God for the docket to the rescue. Again, you can find him on Facebook, find him, join his group, find him on Substack. Of course, he was able to help me. I kept getting rejected by Virginia authorities because they're like, you're not a resident of Virginia. You can't have this public records. If you lived in Virginia, we would give it to you. So I'm like, okay, I need to reach out to all my Patreon members, all my viewers, get in contact with someone who's a resident of Virginia who could put in this public records request for me, and I can pay for it, anything that comes back. Let's find out what happened with Monique and McKee when they lived as a married couple in Roanoke, Virginia. But first, of course, God brought the thought to me, like, why don't I ask the docket? And I'm like, do you know anybody in Virginia we could get this? And he's like, of course. You know, a minute later, of course, I have a contact in Virginia and got the records. So he was able to get the goods. And what's important is not only what authorities were able to give us in terms of any, you know, I asked for, of course, incident reports, body cam videos, 911 calls. Let me know anything that happened in that house related to Monique, you know, under all her maiden names and everything, and Michael McKee. I started at January 1st, 2015, all the way to the present. So what they gave us, there are 4 PDFs, and I can put them up on Patreon. And also thanks to the docket, too, for sending me this video footage of McKee, January 20th, 2026, getting, you know, booked into Ohio when he was transported. But as far as these 2018 violations, there are 4 PDFs explaining some kind of zoning violation. So it includes reports from the Roanoke County Police Department. Michael McKee, it says, cleared by arrest. You know, of course you would think, oh, he was arrested, but of course it doesn't mean that. Anyway, we'll get into it. June 9th, 2018. We're going to fit this incident into the timeline. So let's begin, and I'll explain it all.
Happy birthday, Michael.
Reportedly, Michael McKee and Monique met at Ohio State University back in the day, in the 2010s, somewhere in there. I don't have all those exact dates down, but they met in there, and apparently after a couple of years of dating, they were engaged. So they may have met maybe around 2011, as I understand it, maybe somewhere in there. All we know is by 2013, they were reportedly engaged. Now, there is this video. It's dated June 30th, 2013. It's the video where Monique is leading the crowd, like singing happy birthday to Michael, and she's like, he's right here. I need to check and see if I can find an engagement ring on her finger as of that point. I'll check the video again. Michael McKee looks like a baby, like a fetus, like the kids say these days. In that birthday video, everybody's singing happy birthday to him. So McKee would have been like 27 years old, even though he looks so young and kind of just innocent to me there with his little baseball cap on. Monique is 26. He looks so young and harmless, but looks can be so deceptive. And the way Monique is just getting the crowd, to sing, and she's pointing to him and, bigging him up, kind of gassing him up or whatever. I was thinking, even at that point, perhaps they truly were in love, and maybe Monique, even if she had seen any cracks in McKee's personality, a lack of love he may have experienced from being adopted. Maybe he felt rejected from his bio parents. I don't know. A lot of this I'm just trying to fill in the blanks in my mind until we get more actual facts. But I thought Monique probably thought like I did when I was in my 20s, when I was young and naive. I thought I could love my ex-husband enough. If you give a person love, like, oh, this person was mistreated in their life. Let me love them enough and try and show them enough love, and that will make them better. So it's a really naive thought, and of course this is never any victim blaming. I'm just trying to explain perhaps Monique's state of mind until more of her friends speak out about it, and maybe different friends only know certain things, and it comes together to paint more of a complete picture. Perhaps that's why in there somewhere, allegedly, according to rumors, Monique had called off their engagement or either delayed their wedding several times. Now, I would think a woman generally only does that if she's ready to get married. She generally only does that if she's not just having cold feet about getting married, but having cold feet about marrying this person. So many things. I feel like there's so much wisdom I can just pass on as this woman, 56 years old, about to turn 57 in a few months, just to pass on to young women and men about the signs of abuse or surviving abuse by the grace of God. It was August 22nd, 2015 when McKee married Monique. So he was 29 and she was 28 by that point. If she had called the wedding off or delayed it or whatever a few times, there was probably a more significant reason why. Maybe she even bowed to the pressure of her biological clock. She's like, okay, I'm 28, it's getting up there. Maybe I better think about marriage. And it can be confusing. These are the questions that really helped me get out of that horrible first marriage. Someone asked, okay, do you want kids with this person? And sometimes people might say, oh yeah, I'd have his kids, whatever. The impactful question was, do you want children just like this person? That was like, whoa. When you start asking yourself questions like that. So imagine if it's Monique and McKee, for example. Maybe if she thought, oh yeah, have his kids, that might be fine, whatever. Thank God I never had any children with my ex-husband. I did imagine it though. But see, even when I imagined it, we were driving downtown Chicago and I saw this little, it was probably a relaxer advertisement. These little black girls were so cute up on this billboard, and I was like, oh, maybe that's how our kids would look. Because of course I was projecting like, oh, thinking of my kids looking like me. But then when you ask yourself the question, would you want a child just like this person? Maybe Monique started asking herself the deep questions. Do you want a child that, a little McKee Jr.? Imagine him stomping around all angry and being abusive. And that's one thing that gives you pause. But again, no blame, no shame, nothing. I understand. Some people are wondering, well, why would Monique never call the police? Well, why wouldn't she report this? Why wouldn't she just leave? Monique did, in fact, leave, and unfortunately, she just could never shake McKee. Maybe she bowed to the pressure. Maybe it was, the honeymoon period. Some men, some women, whatever, perform these grand gestures to win you back. For example, I don't like to call him my college sweetheart or anything, but I met my ex in college. And forgive me, people who don't like when YouTubers relate the case to themselves. I'm not doing it in a way to paint myself as any kind of victim. I'm just saying how I can probably understand Monique's thinking. For the people who've never been through it, or for the people who've, never been mistreated, or some people have. And my whole point is that sometimes they do these grand gestures. Like, I met my ex in college, and then later, we dated a while, whatever. It was rocky, it was horrible. But there are good times too. And maybe that's what Monique experienced. The fun times, like when she's singing to him, and they probably had wonderful times. But then when the bad times just totally outweigh those good times, you're in a negative position and you want out. There has to be something better. Like, single people often comment on these videos like, I'm so glad I'm single, Anyway, I met my ex in college, and then we dated, and then I graduated first, and he asked me to marry him. I was sitting there. It was like an afterthought. I was getting ready for college graduation, and it was just like, will you marry me? It was almost like an afterthought. Like, how can I get you not to leave? Eventually, I left. He was in Florida. I moved to Chicago. We did sneak away, elope, got married. I was, 22? I didn't know what I was doing. And then there was this grand gesture right when I was like, maybe we should just call this off. Let's just, stop this. He performed this grand gesture of driving all the way up from Florida to Chicago to take me out to dinner for our first anniversary. And then I was like, okay, fine. So I'm wondering if Monique didn't perhaps want to actually marry him, or maybe she did, or maybe she thought she could love him enough into changing. There's this photo, the one where Monique turns 30. It does not look like she's wearing a large wedding ring, but they were fresh out of college, Monique and McKee, adulting, starting their new life. And that's one thing, I guess that's why we shouldn't make any major decisions, they say, when you lose someone or, during big times. So like leaving college, moving, making major life decisions because you feel like you should, like just because it's a timetable, is wrong. I just wish I had listened to God or accepted God so much earlier in my life, which I did, but you know what I mean, accepted Jesus and been saved and let the Holy Spirit lead me, because instead I had in my mind, perhaps Monique did, a lot of people might, you go to school, you go to college, you graduate, and then you get your MRS degree, It might sound old-fashioned, I don't know, some people still believe that. I just always had in my mind, go all the way through school, graduate from college, get married, have kids, But sometimes when you have your timeline in your mind, it might not be the person God has designed for you. But they moved forward. September 14th, 2015, McKee bought this home in Roanoke, Virginia. So according to his background report I got from that Crime Timelines, I think I said it wrong before, crimetimelines.com. I've linked to them below. A good bit of information there. So maybe Monique had it in her mind, like, okay, we're starting off life, we're going to this beautiful Roanoke, Virginia home, husband, wife, maybe they thought of filling it with kids someday. It sounds like this new house turned into a house of horrors. So the recent police reports are claiming, Monique experienced these horrible things, the forced sex, him strangling her, such a dangerous sign. As we know, those of us who follow true crime, any person, and I'm not just going to say men treating women this way, because men are out there getting mistreated too. I like Behind Criminal Minds. If you listen to that narrator, he speaks of, I'll let you go listen to his testimony, but he speaks of some horrific abuse wrought upon him by his ex, just dangerous. Let's not assume only women experience this. He strangled Monique. The rumors had said, someone said he had put a pillow over her face. I don't know if both instances happened. We've heard about the strangulation, and that brought a flash to my mind too, where my ex living with him in Florida, he was ex-military guy, so he had like the silkscreen death before dishonor type stuff on the wall, and we had a cat. My ex was growing this like wheat plant plant, and our cat got to the weed plant, and he was so angry, like he threw the cat against the wall. Even through all of this, I like calling the police. I don't know why it never entered my mind. It was like never even a thing that I thought of, and that's why I'm thinking maybe Monique never did either. But one time I did think I was going to lose my life. I was afraid. Down there in Florida, so the military guy, he knew strangulation techniques, I guess, and when people say, oh, McKee put his hands around Monique's throat, and I was thinking to myself, you don't know what he did, because it could have been even worse. With my ex, he was grabbing me not just by my throat like this, but by like my esophagus, like terrifying, almost like a look of joy in his eyes. Or it's very strange when demonic people, their demons manifest. Lord, God saved me so many times, but I was afraid, and I thought I could actually die, and then he let me go, Terrifying, the things people think of, he would like do this thing, like he'd pretend to hit me just to see me flinch and then laugh. And so you can only take so much of that for a person you thought, and I'm no angel, don't let me come off as some angel, but some people are just out there troubled. They don't know the extent of anger. I will say there are people that we're all human. Everyone will lose their temper. Some people might yell, but there's a difference between a person who, a pretty rational, even-keeled human being who might lose their temper occasionally. Something could happen. Okay. There's a difference between that and someone like McKee or other abusive people who it's a pattern. Every time might get worse. Every time is dangerous. Anyway, if you read between the lines of the Facebook post that followed that Monique posted, there was already trouble in the marriage. It prompted Monique to want to stay in Columbus. And I understand this. So already, they're moving in sometime around September 2015. McKee bought that home. They're married. They're a married couple. But just months later, February 2nd, 2016, Monique is cherishing her visits back home to Columbus already. On Facebook, she has this photo, nails, foil, and wine, like maybe soaking off the acrylics. Danielle, thanks for talking me into staying another week in Columbus. Never going back. It probably felt so good, such a relief. I'm surprised. Did McKee go with her, or he was off in his residency, probably never home. That's why they advise a lot of people don't even get married during your residency if you're a doctor, because it just usurps your time. You don't have time to start a marriage or build a relationship or what have you. So in February, she's already like never going back. And, it would be one thing if it were just the residency, if it were just the medical residency. Perhaps it was fraught with other things. Rumors talk about infidelity. That's just rumors. We don't know if McKee cheated on her or not. We don't know. But we do know from friends he mistreated her. So that very next month, Monique separates from McKee. She's leaving Virginia, March 2016. 7 months into the marriage, she's separating from him. Best thing she could do, put distance between you. That made me feel better eventually, getting divorced from my ex and just putting distance between us, even though, of course, it doesn't always work to save your life. It can help, just helps you feel better, I guess, in a way. The difference is, these days with social media, with background reports, with, so many people having their records online, public records, unless you go through the trouble to really hide it or, purchase your home in a trust or, try and avoid being put online, people generally can find you. So soon after that, April 2nd, 2016, it's ironic that Monique wrote, "Safety first. Bella is buckled in. See you in 6 hours, Columbus." There's a photo of their dog, buckled inside a car. And it's cool. She's saying safety first. You read between the lines so much, it's like, look, I'm getting me, and I don't blame her for taking the dog away from McKee too. Because just like I explained to you, with my ex, harming our cat, harming me, there tends to be a correlation sometimes between people who will harm animals and people. Anyway, indeed, it is a 6-hour drive from the home on Verona Trail to Columbus, but I was thinking, hadn't Monique already left McKee in March? I don't know. Their divorce papers list a different address in Westerville, Ohio for Monique, and I think that was her parents' parents' house at the time. I could be wrong. So maybe this photo was her leaving in April 2nd, 2016, with her family. And I'm glad she felt comfortable enough and bold enough to announce it on Facebook. She was returning to Columbus. I mean, she didn't put it on blast. She wasn't like, you know, some people, I never do this, but some people blasted on Facebook like every argument, every fight, and he did this to me and all, you know, whatever. She didn't put him on blast. She just put a photo. I'm leaving with the dog. I'm glad she took the dog. It was a big hint McKee eventually got. She was leaving him for good. And perhaps she felt safe with her family, friends, whoever helped, you know, the U-Haul and helped her leave. But perhaps in McKee's mind, since he came home and he saw Monique gone with all her stuff, and he never got his final confrontation with her until, unfortunately, December 2025. Maybe that's what stewed in his mind all those years. But I understand it. Some people only respond to action. I've heard this so many times. Like McKee's ex, the woman on TikTok said, you know, he came home one day, he was devastated. Monique had taken everything. She took the dog and everything. He didn't expect it. So many people say that. I'm sure Monique had probably told him over and over, you can't treat me this way. You cannot do these things to me. Even if she didn't verbalize it, which I'm sure she did, but even if she didn't verbalize it, she probably was sad or melancholy after he would do these things. And he knew doing these things, that's wrong to do to your wife. It's going to impact her. But then to pretend like, oh, I don't know why she left one day. That gets me. That really gets me. When people just play dumb. They play dumb like that. They have no idea, no reason. I have no idea why she left. I don't know. Why did she leave? With me, I always realized it too. I used to think I could just talk, you know, and he would listen. Like with my ex, I would say, you have to treat me better. You can't do this. And it was kind of like, whatever. When you say, okay, I'm leaving you, I want a divorce, and the action is I'm moving out, then it's like, oh, then they hear that. And by then it's too late, which always trips me out, unless they can truly repent and change. But you don't have to like stay there and be their punching bag or their guinea pig to see if they're willing to change, you know? Finding the difference was, thank God for sending me a much better husband and, you know, answering my prayers because I was just miserable, you know, looking out across Lake Michigan and Chicago like, please, God, deliver me from this. And he did. I mean, visions of violence and weapons and so many things in my mind. Thankfully, Monique got away from McKee. June 15th, 2017, their divorce was finalized. Now we finally get to this notice of code violation. It's a big nothing, but it kind of hints to maybe what McKee was experiencing after Monique has gone. He still owns the house at this point. It's February 13th, 2018, so I don't know if he's broken up with the TikTok woman, the woman he was in residency with by then. She said she dated him in 2017 and maybe, I think she said a good chunk of 2018. Maybe they were still together, maybe not.
Okay, so crazy story time. So last Sunday, I get a text message from an old coworker that linked this article about a Michael David McKee, and my heart dropped because that's one of my ex-boyfriends, which is pretty insane. I was floored. So just wanted to hop on and talk a little bit about the whole situation. So I dated him around the end of 2017 through a good chunk of 2018, I think. So what I remember of him is he was just like a nice guy. Like he was quiet, introverted, which there's nothing wrong with that. He was a general surgery resident at the time where I was doing my residency as well. And he was really nice. Like there was no issues with him. He was always kind and respectful with me. I've been over his house. It's pretty crazy that you never know someone. But long story short, he did tell me a little bit about his divorce at the time. So, and again, I want to preface this with, this is his side of the story and what he spoke to me. This is not truth. This is obviously very biased. But what he told me was that one day he came home from residency and that Monique had vanished. Like she took everything. She left the house completely empty and also took their dog. He was just left very stunned because he didn't see this coming, and he was like completely devastated. So again, this is his side of the story, his thing. Not even sure if it's truth, but I do remember him saying that to me. He also, another thing that I remember is that he didn't really talk about his parents. He did tell me he was adopted by an older couple, and he just, like, they were good parents, but he just never talked about them. He never talked to them. I would call my mom like every day. We have a great relationship, but he was just much more reserved. He never really, when I asked him more, he just didn't really want to talk about it, so I kind of left it at that. This is him. This is us celebrating New Year's with a bunch of my friends and family, and this is me right here, and that's him, which is crazy. He also has been to my family home. That's him right there. This is me and my family members. But it's honestly shocking, and I'm grateful that the Lord protected me from moving forward in that relationship. The reason why it ended was I honestly wasn't feeling it. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he was just kind of boring, and he was very much like kind of surface level. There was no, like, I couldn't go deep with him, and yeah, that's why I couldn't form like a deep connection with him because of that. Like, I think he had a wall up where he just like could not go deep with like any conversations really. So that's why it ended, and I moved up north, and the long distance thing didn't work out either. I'm praying for Monique and the Tepe family and their children, but I don't know, I'm shocked. Also, guy aged like a banana, so don't judge me.
She moved away too eventually, but McKee was sent this notice of violation by certified mail from the County of Roanoke Department of Community Development. And it was just about keeping this inoperative motor vehicle. You can't keep it right there, like in your driveway, unless it's shielded from public view. So they did send us these photos too of his old Jeep, and the Virginia is for lovers plate, and it made me think of all the license plates switching and stealing and stuff he was doing recently, allegedly to try and fool authorities when he was going over there to end Monique's life and the life of the husband he could never be, Spencer, a good husband, you know. But it talks about the Roanoke County Code, the violation, it must be corrected within 10 days from the date of receipt of this violation notification. Obviously, McKee didn't take care of it, just like is his MO. When they try and serve him with stuff, he just kind of ignores it, which kind of lets you know, okay, maybe if he had still been with Monique and treated her better, maybe she would have, like, somehow, sometimes the women are like the keepers of the home, like, oh yeah, let's get this car out of here, or let's fix it, or whatever. They had 4 different cars. Google says if you fail to comply with a notice like this, it can lead to further legal action. It shows his plate and everything. So he just had this Jeep sitting out there. Apparently it wasn't running, or it had expired tags on 2 cars, I guess. And the little things you don't take care of, you know, it's like the little foxes that spoil the vine. I'm in the Song of Solomon now. It kind of reminds me of this. Okay, it can be a problem. It can be a real problem when you let things go and fester. And I'm sorry, it is just like a ghetto look. I don't blame them. You know how people have all these cars in their driveway that don't work, or, you know, just sitting around. It's not a good look. So in the divorce papers, I know the 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee belonged to Monique. The affidavit had stated like 4 vehicles. 2 were Michael's, 2 were Monique's. But he must have ignored it. So the problem kept growing. We've already been through this divorce overview, grounds of incompatibility. Michael kept this 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It might have been that one. And then there was that little agreement. Monique had to agree to pay Michael $1,281.59 to settle miscellaneous debts. And I was like, is he charging her for the dog? You know, it's something really petty that he's charging her for. It's some unnamed debt. It doesn't mean it's a credit card debt because those are listed separately. So it's something where he was still like trying to stick it to her like, oh, you took whatever, and if you don't pay me back, you've got to pay like 20-something% in interest and whatever. But they were all responsible for their own loans, credit cards, no spousal support. Monique was the one with the attorney. Michael represented himself pro se. Monique got the private judge, paid for them. They had no kids. But then it does connect to the zoning violation documents because the same Verona Trail house mentioned in the divorce decree matches the location of the police visits in these zoning documents. It confirms by the time it was February 2018, Michael McKee was the only person, sole owner and resident, unless he had someone living there that we didn't know about. He was awarded this house in their 2017 divorce. So it was all on him. So basically, he must not have taken care of it. Back, it actually says from February 12th, 2018. Almost 4 months later, June 9th, 2018, it's escalating. They're visiting his house to figure out what's going on with this Jeep that's just sitting there. It says cleared by arrest, but like they say, it doesn't always mean he was arrested. This doesn't mean it's anything criminal back then. That's what I was searching for, criminal activities and everything. But they're knocking, there's no answer. The house appears to be under construction. On the inside, they say there's a black and red Jeep in the driveway, 2 different Jeeps with expired tags. The name of the document is warrant service. There's the code violation sent. I don't think this is a criminal case. The case was heard July 26, 2018, and the case was dismissed due to bringing the vehicle in compliance. So he took care of it eventually. But there were all these visits to the police. Maybe he was getting the house constructed. I don't know if he still lived there. Maybe he lived in a different point. I know he moved to Baltimore at some point, so I'll look for all of that. But it just shows me him not taking care of things. But the most important thing I learned from this FOIA is that Monique never called the cops on McKee while living in that house on Verona Trail, and I can relate. I never called the cops on my ex. I don't even know if it ever entered my mind, just from some of the things like breaking up. God just saved me. There was one point where he tossed the phone base into my thigh, and I had this huge bruise, and I showed my friends, and they were kind of like stunned. They didn't know what to do. Oh my goodness, I got away. As we were breaking up, I remember laying in bed, and I just said, I don't want you to hurt me anymore. I didn't know what he had in his hand, but I heard him like hitting himself with something. And I just fled into the next room, and he came out, and there was like blood streaming down his face because he was like, fine, I'll hurt myself. And he started hitting himself. It was his gun. And he was a fan of like hollow point bullets. I mean, imagine if that had gone off, and I would lock myself in the bathroom and he would like break in and get in there, and what a mess. God delivered me. So I pray for anyone going through something similar that Monique and Spencer went through. And I think, maybe Monique felt guilty for just, not her fault, but just bringing this Yahoo into their lives who wouldn't leave them alone. And maybe Spencer felt like, what should I do? Trying to protect my wife, and just what a mess. Let's close with the bride's dream. Song of Solomon 3:1. On my bed by night, I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. And that reminded me when I was reading that, like, yeah, it can start off so nice, the relationships, the love, the honeymoon period, and all that stuff. And then, just the 3rd chapter of Solomon, already she can't find her love. We can always find this love, though. He's the lover of our souls. So I hope that helps someone. It's hard. It's difficult. The people who are like, why didn't Monique just leave? And why didn't she do this? And why didn't she call the cops? I don't know. Some people, maybe it just doesn't enter our mind. Some people, we think maybe that'll amp them up. Maybe they'd only spend a night in jail and be right back and come back even angrier. There's plenty of reasons. It's just scary. But I feel so bad that Monique had to endure this and Spencer had to endure this. A man who, you can't love enough. You can't show enough love. Our human capabilities can't show enough love. He has to tap into the deeper source. McKee should have tapped into the deeper source to find that to fill him up. Whatever he thought he was lacking from Monique. Anyway, I better get out of here. Look for all the documents below. It's just so sad, but in so many ways so relatable. So many people have experienced mistreatment. So many people I know still are. Just knowing different friends and acquaintances' stories of what they are putting up with and dealing with, and some of them never left, some of them have left. I don't judge people because I know how rough it can be. I hope that helps and makes any kind of sense, but what I keep thinking of is just seeing a person's limits on their anger, like testing out a person and knowing you can have agreements or disagreements. And yeah, they might get angry, they might raise their voice, stuff might go out of whack, but if they're putting their hands on you and being violent with you, that's where you want to get away by any means necessary and pray to God to deliver you in Jesus. I just feel so bad for their children and their loved ones in this unnecessary, horrible crime. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see what we can find next. Take care.